So you have all put on paper or on electronic paper. Okay, thank you. I can see it. You have all put on paper the steps that you follow according to your experience. I trust you guys. I have no option but to trust you. Don't challenge that. So here, I'm going to share some tools and techniques as well. Let's see what we have in common. First of all, I mean, like most of you must have written down in your paper when it comes to the requirements collection process, a brainstorming session. This is a typical tool that we use. Have them all in a physical room or in a virtual room and do a brainstorming session. Well, sometimes a synonym to brainstorming is havoc. Too many people talk at the same time. The pure definition of brainstorming is unfiltered idea generation. So my participants should be in a position to provide their opinion without being judged, without being afraid, or without feeling contained by other people's perception. Let me go back to the cultural differences. You have a brainstorming session and you have a bunch of Greeks and Italians over there that dominate the discussions. And the northern guys, the Swedes, the Finns, are like not very talkative. What does that mean? You have to do something with the freaking Greeks, huh? They have to put a zip on it. So how can you do that? Tricks of the trade. The first one, you have learned it. You have them write it down on Post-it notes. Guys, you don't talk to each other. Here are your Post-it notes. Write one requirement on each Post-it note and give it back to me. I take the Post-it notes, I throw away the double ones, and then I use them on a different tool. And that different tool is called an affinity diagram or an accolade wall. That means you have a huge flip chart on your wall, and you take all your Post-it notes and you bring together the requirements per category. So let me see, where's my pen here? So for example, if I have like a bunch of Post-it notes, you can see my screen, right? You can see it. I will cluster them per categories. So here is going to be category technical specifications. Here is going to be the category security requirements. Here is going to be the category safety requirements. Here is going to be the category procurement requirements, and so on and so forth. So I collect your Post-it notes, I throw away the double ones, and then I group them. And what do I do next? I call you guys close to me and say, guys, let's just focus now on this category. Forget the other ones. Are we missing something? Now it is much easier for you to focus and identify if something is missing, because you have the contributions of the other members and you're focused also in one specific category of requirements. Once you're done with this category, you will move to the next one. Then you will move to the next one, and then you will move to the next one. And there is one extra step here that you can take. When you're done with this, you have them all walk away from the accolade wall, the flip chart. And you ask them the following question. Guys, we did well with the already identified categories. Is there a chance that we might have missed a category? So you have them think at category level now. If a new category pops up, you're going to put it here, and then you're going to collect the Post-it note. Okay? practical. Don't let them get lost. Keep them focused. Another way of doing the brainstorming session is virtually, like the Delphi technique that I communicated to you earlier. So you use the BCC functionality of your email, you send them the emails, they provide their contributions. They don't know who else is in the communication so that they cannot be influenced. Imagine sitting in a room with your boss and you want to say something and you know that your boss is against it. Would you say it? No. But if I am the project manager, I want to know it because it's very useful information for me. I don't want it to be hidden. So use your tools properly. So we talked about brainstorming. We've talked about affinity diagrams. And then we're going to talk a bunch of other techniques as well. The representation tool that I'm using here to cluster all the different techniques is called a mind map. That means that you can even use the mind mapping tool to guide your brainstorming session. And how do you do that? You can put the project title here, and you can go to your room and say, guys, let's try to identify at a first iteration the key categories of requirements that we need. So they will start saying this category, this category, this category, and so on and so forth. And then you lead your group. Okay, guys, let's focus now on this one. This category of requirements, what type of requirements does it include? Then they will go like this, they will go like this. And you will have a bunch of contributions. Can we break down this requirement into sub-requirements? Is it necessary? Well, yes, we can and we should, because it includes this one and that one. So this is mind mapping. You can guide your flock to contribute in a requirements elicitation in a structured way, and they don't get lost. Another technique that we use, it's the nominated group technique, the nominal group technique, the facilitated workshops, and the focus groups. These are 3 different configurations of a brainstorming session. Let me explain them to you. I will start with a focus group, which is the most common one. Has any of you used it in the past? Have you ever used a focus group? Luis, you have used it, and Hugh has used it. Who wants to contribute? Hugh? Can you provide me with a description of the focus group? What is so essential about it?
Yeah, I used well, I was part of a focus group which was used for the formulation of a stress management policy for the Defence Forces in Ireland about 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And with that, various various players were invited to a focus group, and these were people from different backgrounds, but they had one thing in common, and that was the fact that they had something to contribute to the formulation of a policy on stress management. These people could have been operational commanders or health practitioner professionals or people who had experience of the actual what would you call it, symptoms of stress and things like that. So that was basically the focus group that I was involved in.
You communicated the key concept of the focus group. So here's what a focus group is. First of all, you have to have a broad idea of what your project is. And you will invite, in your meeting group configuration, in your focus group configuration, external stakeholders, like Hugh mentioned. So who are these stakeholders from the community that will interact with the results of my project? external. So you might be having the representative of the government. You might be having the representative from the construction agency. You might be having a representative of insurance companies and so on and so forth. So external stakeholders that have interest on the results of your project, and their input is crucial. And your communication should be two-way. What do you need from me? And what do I need from you? You have to establish the information from both these communications. In this type of workshops, we do not have a moderator. We don't have a facilitator. We have a moderator, and I will explain the difference. A moderator is more active in guiding the exchanges in the meeting, whereas a facilitator is more passive. In a focus group, you need a moderator to guide the discussions and direct the discussions. So he will move from one stakeholder to the other, and he will ask specific questions to each stakeholder and jot down the requirements. This is a focus group, external guys. Prerequisites, I have a partially clear view of my project. I'm not at point zero. Now, the next group is called the facilitated workshop. Here, on the contrary, we're not going to have externals. We're going to have internals from the organization. For example, from the HR department, from the financial department, from the procurement department, from the project self, and so on and so forth. And the principal objective of this meeting is to gain internal buy-in. You have to persuade your internal stakeholders to commit to the purpose of the present project. Here, on the contrary, you will not have a moderator, you will have a facilitator, because this meeting should conclude with a consensus. And what do I mean? You, as a project manager, communicate at the beginning the needs of the project as already identified. I will need these resources, I will need these elements, and so on and so forth. And then you will find the HR guy with the financial department fighting over whether they can afford the resources, whether the HR department can recruit the resources for the benefit of the project, and so on and so forth. So, to recap, facilitated workshop is an internal meeting. It's run by a facilitator. The dynamics in there sometimes are very strange, and you need to derive to a consensus for the benefit of the project. Now, given this specific workshop is very strange, you should always have how it's called, like a note keeper. So somebody who will be sitting aside and he will be keeping minutes of this meeting. And these guys participating in the meeting prior to exiting the room will have to sign. This is the ideal way of running the specific workshop. Okay, they have to commit to what they have communicated and agreed during the workshop. I will leave nominated group technique for now, and I will go to prototypes and shadowing. Prototypes. When the output of your project is something tangible, like an IT system, like a construction building, you can have a prototype. A prototype is something like a replica that has the basic functionalities of what you used to produce. Not all, because it's too early. And you want to communicate it to your stakeholders and elicit additional requirements. On top of prototyping, we can use shadowing. So let's say that our deliverable is an information system. You will have somebody interacting with the information system, and on top of him, you will have somebody playing shadow. So that guy will be monitoring the victim while interacting with a potential deliverable. And whenever he will see the guy going like, oh, what is this? He would note it down. Okay, there's a bug here, I need to fix it. Or he would interact. What is it that triggered this reaction for you? You know something, there's a feature missing here. And if that is not in place, I will not be able to do what I'm supposed to do with this system. So this is how shadowing works. You have an expert monitoring somebody interacting with a prototype. Other tools for collecting requirements are polls. I don't have to say much about polls. It's easy. But I can say quite a few about interviews. Interviews are very tricky. So for example, you have different formats of interviews. You have structured interviews and you have unstructured interviews again as well. So here's a question from me. You have to go to your boss, to the head of the mission, and take an interview from him for the benefit of the project. What type of interview would you use? Structured or semi-structured? Hands up. Structured or semi-structured interview with your boss?
You don't choose anything, Elias. Your boss chooses for you.
No, he doesn't choose for me. It's up to me to select.
I may say structure.
Okay. Those that believe that we should use structured, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And those that believe that you should use unstructured, raise your hands. It cannot be the same person, huh? We don't go like this in both questions. Okay. For those that answered structured, I will say that in principle, I'm being diplomatic here, this is the wrong approach. Because, hey, Moose. Yes, guys, this is the wrong approach. And you know why? Because your boss actually knows more than me, you, and everybody in the mission. He's up there for a reason. He knows things that we're not aware of. So you do not want to channel his contribution. You want to deliver, you want to communicate the context and then elicit required from information. Whereas when you—
I will be lucky the next time.
Say again?
I will be lucky the next time.
Okay. So when you go to the low level tech geeks, they get lost if you're generic to them. You have to channel them. So you have to have a very structured exchange with them. In principle, it's not just the extremities, the unstructured and the structured. You also have the semi-structured interview. And this is where it varies, depending on whether we're addressing a high executive or somebody working at the lowest levels. Another question relating to interviews. Are you going to have interviews with all your stakeholders or with just a number? If you have 100 stakeholders, you're going to spend like 80% of your project time taking interviews. You don't want to do that. You want to cherry pick. So keep that in mind as well. Now, I communicated to you techniques to collect requirements. So I have answered the first question. How do I collect requirements? Now let's move to the second question. How do I prioritize requirements?
Yes, can we ask a question at this level?
Yes, please. I can hear you.
So we have 11 tools, Elias, and do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. So I have a quick question about this. Right. I'm saying we just discussed 11 different requirement collection tools.
I've only talked about
obviously. Well, but that's what it's showing on the slide, right?
Yes, but I have not yet talked about these two here. I will cover them now. These are the two that I left out so far because they are slightly different. all the previous tools were for requirements elicitation to collect requirements. And now we can use these two tools to prioritize the requirements. So, for example, a nominal group technique is a formulation of a brainstorming session where you have your participants put a weighting factor on each requirement, let's say from 1 to 5. So the same post-it note will go through all the participants and they will all put their weighting factor and you're going to take the average. And this will allow you to prioritize in a way. So nominal group technique is a brainstorming format that is used for requirements prioritization in principle. Another tool that I use for prioritization is the matrix that you see over here. So what
Yeah,
do
may
I...
I ask something?
Yes, please. Yes, Dimitris.
The tools for the collection of requirements, where can we find them? On the guide?
In the slide deck that I'm going to provide you with.
There is any theory behind of this?
Behind the tools, yes, there is theory in other publications. For example,
Okay.
all the tools are open access. So if you go to Simple Learn, if you Google Simple Learn, because these are not methodology specific tools, these are generic project management tools. If you go within Simple Learn and Google and search the name of each of these tools, you are going to have the detailed analysis. Okay, but you will also have them in the Ilias platform. Now, another tool for prioritization. You have the list of requirements, not prioritized. Let's say, and you put them all like this: requirement A, requirement B, requirement C, D, E, and so on and so forth. It goes down. Then you're going to place the same requirements here, like that. You want to write the exact same requirements there. I am going to erase all the common ones, A with A. I'm not going to compare A with A. It's like comparing apples with apples, or B with B, or C with C, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to use any of this because it will be like comparing the same thing. I'm comparing A with B and B with A. Same thing. So we take. And here's how it works. Okay, between requirement B and requirement A, which one is more important to us? So it's going to be, let's say, requirement B. Between C and A, which one is more important? It's going to be C, and so on and so forth. At the end, you will go and you will count. How many times do I have B? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to write 4. How many times do I have C? 1, 2. How many times do I have D? Is 1 time here. Do I have E? Is 1, 2. How many times do I have A? Is only 1. So which one is the most important requirement here? Which one is the most important one? B. B is the most important requirement, followed by C and E, and then we have D and A. If you have like 70 requirements, this is going to be much different. But this way, you can prove to somebody that the prioritization did not just come out of your mind. You have the guys sitting in your audience and you ask them, guys, how many of you do you believe that B is more important than A? You raise a hand. Okay, majority. So B it is. Unbiased contribution by your stakeholders. Or another approach. You have your requirements here, like I said earlier, and you have them all vote. And then you take the average. And then you rank according to the average. Everything is prioritized now, automatically. One more approach. This one is mostly used in the IT field, and it's called the Moscow technique. No, it's not Russian, but it comes from the first letters, okay? We break them down into must have, should have, could have, and scope out, will not have. Okay, guys? And you have your people in your room, and you have them cherry pick the requirements according and place them within these 3 clusters. The definition is these are guaranteed. I mean, like the client said that he wants these requirements in like 100%. They're written in the technical specifications. We cannot do without this. These are anticipated. These are expected. But we're not going to go crazy, huh? I'm going to put some effort aside. If I can make it, it's okay. Possibility. These are just a bonus. If I can have this in, the client will be extremely happy, but he had already communicated to me that these are like, we're not going to die over this. So this is a way of clustering the various requirements into beans and thus prioritizing them. So I have talked about collecting requirements. I have talked about prioritizing requirements. I have not talked about the tricky stuff yet, which is saying no to somebody. So let me go back over here. And let's say that I have finished off my prioritization exercise. And this is the actual order of priority of my requirement. This is the actual priority. I go to my boss and I ask, my dear beloved boss, which one is the driving constraint of our project? Is it the scope, the technical specification? Is it the budget? Is it the time frame within which we have to deliver? So most probably the boss is going to come up, you know something, Elias? Budget. We cannot exceed the budget by a single penny. So what do? Since these are prioritized, I'm going to go, how many? I have $10. This one costs 2. This one costs 5. This one costs 1. This one costs once as well, and so on and so forth. Where do I run out of money? 7, 8, 9, here. What does that mean? Does this line mean that I actually going to stop here? No, it actually means that I'm going to stop somewhere around here. But I will not stop here. Okay, or I will not stop here. Is it clear? Now there's the other approach. I go to my boss and my boss says, you know something, Elias? The driving constraint is the scope. That means we have to definitely deliver this specifications. Okay, these specifications are characterized by this set of requirements. This is easy job. I don't care, this is it. And now let's go to the tricky part. The boss comes and says, you know something, Elias, we have the money, we have the requirements, they fall under our capacity, under our skills, but we have to deliver within, let's say 5 months. What do? I cannot go and say that this one is going to take 1 month, this one is going to take 2 months, this one is going to take 2 months, and this one is going to take 5 months, and say 5 months, okay, this is what, no. And why can't I say that one? Because you know something? This requirement might be running here like this, and this one, in order to be delivered, might be running parallel. And this one goes here, and then you have this one over here being here like that. So what does that mean? Time chart. This is time. Okay? And the size of this represents the duration. That means that I will first have to schedule my requirements, do my Gantt chart, define the relationship between the requirements, and then see where my deadline is. And then I will deliver everything that falls within my deadline. Sorry, boss, but within these days, this available time, I can only deliver that. because my estimates are not flooded, because I use the metal plate with the metal pole as a negotiation tool, the triple. Reality check. It's never going to be just one single constraint. It's going to be a combination. So you will have to balance these three approaches. Okay, guys? Questions on the tools so far? Any questions on the tools that I presented?
Yes.
Yes, Vasiliki.
Okay. Yes, my question is on the tools and on the interview, because when we were doing the exercise, I have written the interview and I wasn't sure about it because I was wondering about the honesty. Even though we have a person that we're taking an interview or many people, I don't know if they will be honest. For example, a poll or voting, maybe it would be better.
When you collect, when you collect contribution by multiple stakeholders, errors tend to identify themselves. Why? Because when you cross-tabulate the information by the multiple stakeholders, you will be in a position to identify the outliers. Got it? If you have a very small sample, then it's going to be very difficult to distinguish. If you have a large sample of interviewees, then the outliers will pop up. I've left the best one for the end. How do I have my participants formulate their requirements? This is a format of a user story. We use it in IT systems, but I use it in all my projects. Always, either they're IT or non-IT. Whenever a stakeholder comes and communicates a requirement, I want him or she to communicate it like this. Me, as the role, I want to be able to do that in order to achieve that. An example, as a registered user, this is a role. I want to be able to log in. This is what I want to have in order to have access to subscriber-only content. The most important piece of information here is the reason, is the why. This guy wants to have this result. But in his perception, he thinks that he can only achieve it through this approach. No, there might be other approaches as well. That's why I want you, when you collect your requirements, to have them define the role, the goal, and the end state that they wish to achieve, the reason. If you manage to do all this, you will avoid and you will be in a position to tackle situations described by these three little guys here. You can go back with arguments. Let me give you examples from India, once again, and Japan, but mostly India. So we've been training project managers that undertake projects in India, and they've been sharing with us their experiences. So another characteristic for people from India, Pakistan, and this region down there is like, guys, can we do that? Yes. Can we do that? Yes. Can we do that? Yes. They always say yes. They can do everything. It's against their culture to say no. But you know what happens afterwards? Nothing. They just don't deliver. It's a cultural thing. You have to understand. It's not easy for them to say no in front of an audience. So you have to approach them in a different way, and you have to use your tools properly. And now wrapping up the session. Did you have in your slips of paper at least one tool from what I communicated that you didn't have it there? If you have at least one, I'm happy. If you have them all, then you can take a promotion. Go to your boss and ask for a raise as well. Any questions, guys? Questions? Okay.
There's a quick one here, Elias, and I think that's what I was trying to get across since the beginning. So these different tools, is there any way one can link them to the previous profiling of stakeholders we have done, in terms of positioning? You remember personality profiling we did
Yeah.
on the stakeholders?
Yes.
Is there any way, based on that analysis and profiling, someone can say, okay, now I understand the type of person this stakeholder is. This would be the best tool I can use to collect his requirement and also engage with him on the requirement prioritization. Is there anything like that that you're aware of?
There is totally a interrelationship between these two. And as I have said earlier, this is the reason we do first the stakeholder identification and analysis. So by analyzing your stakeholders, you know which ones to invite in its workshop configuration. Is that what you
Okay.
are?
Okay, now for me it's interesting because I think the only person in this class here, Emily, knows probably why I'm asking such a question. For Emily and myself, where we operate in, I mean, we have our biggest stakeholder is the head of mission, and you really need to figure out how to engage with him the right way, and that's not easy. So it was just interesting for me, I think, to look at it from that perspective.
First things first, you have to communicate the set of tools to your stakeholders, and you have to persuade them, and this is something that they cannot deny. My dear stakeholders, by using these tools, we can prove to the rest of the stakeholders that we have unbiased decisions. This is what I managed to do in the steering committee, the member states, 2 weeks back, to persuade them that the terms of reference that I have submitted for approval in order to have the contracting procedure are formulated in a way that put aside any bias impact or any potential leveraging of the results. And you also have to communicate to them that this is the optimal approach, because when the head of mission goes to FPI to negotiate on the budget, he will have to persuade them as well. If he goes and says, I have this estimation and this estimation according to my experience, I will quote Edward Deming. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I have this one printed in my office for everybody who shows up. So the point is, when you go and you negotiate, you have to be in a position to back up your arguments. And when you provide that information, that solid information, nobody can say no. So your job is to persuade your boss that, boss, I will provide adequate arguments for you to go and defend your budget into FPI, but you have to trust me. And this is something that does not happen from one day to the other. It needs work. Okay? So wrapping up requirements, identify them, analyze them, link them to your stakeholders, because you're going to have to go back and inform them, and trace them. When you receive a requirement, you have to trace it out throughout the life cycle of the project to make sure that the approved ones have been implemented. Last but not least, you have your stakeholder metrics. You have your requirement solicitation metrics. You have them all there. There might be sensitive information in there. Pay attention to where you communicate them. You don't want to write in your risk log that requirement A by Elias piece of crap, and then have it circulating within the mission. Okay? Pay attention on what you write down and how you communicate it. Because you might end up from mission A to mission B for no reason. Now, let me find something that I want to share with you. Where is it? Because we are all a bit tired and we all want to crack a smile. Voila. You can see my screen?
Our company has a new strategic initiative to increase market penetration.
Can you see my screen? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 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 yes.
So you see it in full screen and you can listen to the lady, right?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
maximize brand loyalty and enhance intangible assets. In pursuit of these objectives, we've started a new project for which we require 7 red lines. I understand your company can help us in this matter.
Of course. Walter here will be the project manager. Walter, we can do this, can't we?
Yes, of course. Anderson here is our expert in all matters related to the drawing of red lines. We've brought him along today to share his professional opinion.
Nice to meet you. Well, you all know me. This is Justine, our company's design specialist. Hello. We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular, some with green ink and some with transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid.
Let's not rush into any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out. At the end of the day, you are an expert.
The term red line implies the color of the line to be red. To draw a red line with green ink is, well, if it's not exactly impossible, it's pretty close to being impossible.
What does that even mean? Impossible.
I mean, it is possible. There are some people, say, suffering from color blindness, for whom the color of the lines doesn't really make a difference. But I'm quite sure that the target audience of your project doesn't consist solely of such people.
So in principle, this is possible.
I'll simplify. A line as such can be drawn with absolutely any ink, but if you want to get a red line, you need to use red ink.
What if we draw them with blue ink?
It still won't work. If you use blue ink, you'll get blue lines. And what exactly did you mean when you talked about the transparent ink?
How to better explain? I'm sure you know what transparent means.
Yes, I do.
And what a red line means. I hope I don't need to explain to you.
Of course not.
Well, you need to draw a red line with transparent ink.
Could you describe what you imagine the end result would look like?
Oh, come on, Anderson. What have we got here? Kindergarten.
No, I'm just trying to get a...
Let's not waste our time with these unproductive quarrels. The task has been set, the task is plain and clear. Now, if you have any specific questions, then go ahead.
You're the expert here.
All right, let's leave aside the color for the moment. You had something there also relating to perpendicularity.
7 lines, all strictly perpendicular.
To what?
To everything amongst themselves. I assumed you know what perpendicular lines are like.
Of course he does. He's an expert.
2 lines can be perpendicular. All 7 can't be simultaneously perpendicular to each other. I'll show you. This is a line, right?
Yes.
And another, is it perpendicular to the first line?
Well,
Yes, it is perpendicular.
exactly.
Wait, I'm not done. And a third one, is it perpendicular to the first line? Yes, it is. But it doesn't cross the second line. They're both parallel, not perpendicular.
Suppose so.
There it is. 2 lines can be perpendicular.
Can I have the
isn't it?
pen? How about this?
This is a triangle. It's definitely not perpendicular lines. And there are 3, not 7.
Why are they blue?
Indeed, I wanted to ask that myself.
I have a blue pen with me. This was just a demonstration.
That's the problem, your lines are blue. Draw them with red ink.
It won't solve the problem.
Well, how do you know before you've tried? Let's draw them with red ink, then let's see.
I don't have a red pen with me, but I'm completely certain that with red ink, the result will still be the same.
Didn't you tell us earlier that you could only draw red lines with red ink? In fact, yes, I've written that down here. And now you want to draw them with blue ink. Do you want us to call these red lines?
I think I understand. You're not talking about the color now, right? You're talking about that what do you call it?
Perpendicularity, yes!
That's it. Now you've confused everyone. So what exactly is stopping us from doing this?
Geometry.
Just ignore it.
We have a task. 7 red lines. It's not 20, it's just 7. Anderson, I understand you're a specialist of a narrow field. You don't see the overall picture. But surely it's not a difficult task to draw some 7 lines.
Exactly. Suggest a solution. Any fool can criticize. No offense. But you're an expert. You should know better.
Okay. Let me draw you 2 perfectly perpendicular red lines, and I will draw the rest with transparent ink. They'll be invisible, but I'll draw them.
Would this suit us? Yes, this will suit us. Yes, but at least a couple with green ink. Oh, and I have another question, if I may. Can you draw one of the lines in the form of a kitten?
What?
In the form of a kitten? Market research tells us our users like cute animals. It would be really great if we could...
No.
But why?
Look, I can of course draw you a cat. I'm no artist, but I can give it a try, but it won't be a line anymore, it'll be a cat. A line and a cat, these are 2 different things.
A kitten. Not a cat, but a kitten. They're little, cute, cuddly. Cats, on the other hand,
It won't make a difference.
Anderson, at least hear her out. She hasn't even finished speaking and you're already saying no.
I got the idea, but it's impossible to draw a line in the form of a cat. I'm done.
What about a bird?
So, where did we stop? What are we doing?
7 red lines, 2 with red ink, 2 with green ink, and the rest with transparent. Did I understand correctly?
Yes.
Excellent. In which case, that's everything, right?
Oh, I almost forgot. We also have a red balloon. Do you know if you could inflate it?
What do I have to do with balloons?
It's red.
Anderson, can you or can you not do this? A simple question.
As such, I can, of course, but...
Excellent. Organise a business trip. We'll cover the expenses, go over to their location, inflate the balloon. Well, this is very productive. Thank you all.
Can I ask you one more question, please? When you inflate the balloon, could you do it in the form of a kitten?
Of course I can. I can do anything. I can do absolutely anything. I'm an expert.
Yusufu, this is what you were talking about.
No, this is much better than what I was talking about, Elias. Thank you. This was lovely. Who did he recognize himself as a project manager in this?
I believe. Yes?
I really thought we were in a meeting with our head of mission.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. That's just what I wanted to say. And Emily is our daily hero. She always ends up getting what the head of mission wants. She does all the time. We don't know how.
She can run miracles, I guess. Emily, the next
Yes.
session is on you. You have to teach us how you do tricks. So, guys, this was it for today. We tried to relax towards the end. I mean, like to listen up a bit. What I want to do for the next 15 minutes, we're going to use your beloved tool. But what I have done so far is like I anchored all elements. I inserted the post myself. I have anchored the post-it notes. So that means you cannot move anything. You don't have to insert post-it notes because I have them there for you. So you just have to double click on them and insert your lessons learned. So you see, I'm a chameleon. I adapt to reality. Let me share the link to you. You can still see my screen, right? Okay, guys. So, updating changes. Sure. You will scroll down and you will go to the feedback grid. Once you go to the feedback grid, forget about anything else. Huh? I have 4 categories. What worked well during our session today? Do you have any unanswered questions? Put them here so I can address them tomorrow. And here is what we have to do in relation to your actual job. Depending on what you learned today, what do you believe that you have to change in your job? Like using the elements that you learned today and take them in your job environment. And here, new ideas that you need to try. relating from the input that you have received today. Just click on the post-it note and you enter. Let me put it now in the chat room. And you can play. Just don't fight over the same post-it note, please. There you go, guys. Let's see what's going to happen now.
Elias.
Yeah.
Can you explain again what we should write in each
It's written
category?
here. So
Okay,
please
okay.
do relate to the course. What worked well in the course? If I have
Mm-hmm.
any unanswered questions that I didn't address during the course,
Okay.
and this relates to your job, depending on what you learned today, what has to change within your job?
Okay.
And depending on what you've learned today, which of these do you consider new ideas that you should try?
Okay, thank you.
Is it still difficult for you? Just double click on a post-it note and write something. Yes, Isufu.
Oh no, okay, I got it here maybe eventually.